New York City, 8:13 p.m. The lights went out. Skyscrapers blinked into darkness, subways screeched to a halt, and millions of phones went dead at the same moment. In Chicago, traffic froze as signals failed. In Los Angeles, the Hollywood Hills disappeared into black silence. It wasn't a storm, it wasn't an accident. It was war, silent, invisible, and devastating. With a single coordinated strike, China had shut down the American power grid. And for the first time in modern history, the world's most powerful nation faced Armageddon without a single shot fired. It began with glitches, bank ATMs spitting out error codes, GPS signals drifting off course, streaming platforms freezing, annoyances at first, the kind of bugs people curse at before restarting their devices. But deep inside the US power grid, hidden for years, malicious code was awakening. At 8:13 p.m. Eastern Time, the attack went live. Across New York, substations overloaded simultaneously. Transformers burst into flame, showering sparks across darkened streets. The Empire State Building went black, its beacon extinguished for the first time in living memory. Subway tunnels filled with smoke as trains ground to a stop, passengers trapped in suffocating heat. Chicago followed. Entire districts plunged into darkness as control systems failed. Elevators froze mid-floor. Traffic lights blinked out, leaving intersections choked with gridlock and sirens wailing. In the chaos, looters smashed storefronts, their shadows moving through shattered glass in the glow of burning cars. 3 hours later, Los Angeles fell. Power stations on the West Coast collapsed under cascading cyber attacks, each failure triggering the next. Hospitals switched to backup generators, but many failed under the same code. Operating rooms froze mid-surgery. Water pumps stalled. Within minutes, the City of Angels was a sprawl of black streets, lit only by fires and headlights. The United States had been struck in its heart, not by missiles or bombs, but by lines of code. Intelligence analysts pieced it together in real time. The malware had been embedded for years, hidden inside imported equipment, updated silently through compromised software patches. It wasn't the work of freelancers or rogue hackers. It was coordinated, synchronized, and unmistakably state-backed. All signs pointed east onto Beijing. On social media, panic erupted. Hashtags like Hi Dark America and Cyber Armageddon trended worldwide. Footage from cell phones showed New Yorkers lighting the streets with candles, Angelenos filling freeways in desperate flight, Chicagoans huddled in powerless train stations. Conspiracy theories spread like wildfire. Was this the beginning of World War III? Was nuclear retaliation next? The White House scrambled. In the Situation Room, advisors debated whether the blackout was a declaration of war. The Secretary of Defense demanded immediate cyber counterstrikes, promising to burn Beijing's systems to the ground. The president hesitated. If we escalate now, this could go nuclear, he warned. But if we do nothing, we've already lost. Meanwhile, America's enemies celebrated. State media in Beijing called it an unfortunate systems collapse, denying involvement while broadcasting footage of U.S. chaos to billions of viewers. Russian channels aired endless commentary on America's vulnerability. In Tehran, officials praised the end of Western arrogance. But on the ground, none of that mattered to ordinary Americans. In hospitals, patients gasped as ventilators failed. In airports, thousands were stranded as flights grounded indefinitely. In prisons, doors sealed shut, guards trapped inside cell blocks with rioting inmates. The very fabric of modern life, electricity, water, communication, unraveled in a single night. And this was just the beginning. Because as dawn approached, new reports flooded in. Not only was the grid down, so were the satellites. GPS signals scrambled, communications jammed, stock exchanges offline. America wasn't just dark, it was blind. The first night of Cyber Armageddon had ended. The world's most advanced nation stood crippled, silent, and vulnerable. And its enemies were watching closely, deciding whether to strike while the lights were still out. Dawn rose on a dark America. From coast to coast, cities remained powerless, their skylines broken silhouettes against the morning haze. Emergency broadcasts crackled weakly on battery-powered radios. Stay calm, stay indoors. Federal response is underway. But on the ground, calm was gone. In New York, food lines stretched for blocks as grocery stores opened doors without registers, handing out what they could before looters returned. In Los Angeles, smoke plumes rose where gas stations had erupted into fire, ignited by panicked drivers and broken pumps. Chicago's hospitals, running on dwindling generator fuel, pleaded for airlifts of medical supplies. The chaos was exactly what Beijing had designed. In hidden facilities across China's Cyber Warfare Command, operators monitored the blackout in real time. Their attack had struck deeper than power plants. Banking systems were paralyzed. Satellite communications scrambled. Air defense radars blinked offline. Entire military networks were reduced to silence. For the first time since Pearl Harbor, America stood blind and crippled. In Washington, the response took shape. At 0700 hours, U.S. Cyber Command initiated Operation Phoenix Strike, a full-spectrum counterattack. Code crafted over years was unleashed, worming its way into Chinese shipping databases, air traffic control systems, and financial exchanges. By 9:00 a.m. Beijing time, container ships in the South China Sea froze mid-course, their navigation corrupted. Screens flickered across Chinese banks as balances scrambled. Flights over Shanghai were grounded. But the counterstrike did not halt China's assault. Instead, it triggered the next wave. At 10:42 Eastern, the U.S. Pacific Fleet lost satellite uplink. Ships operating near Guam went dark, their communications jammed, radars flickering uselessly. Minutes later, false signals appeared. Phantom fleets plotted across their screens. Chinese cyber warriors had hijacked targeting systems, planting ghost ships to draw American forces into traps. By noon, Wall Street was under siege. The New York Stock Exchange, already closed by the blackout, found its backup servers under direct cyber attack. Algorithms dumped fake trades into global markets, erasing billions in minutes. Panic rippled worldwide. Tokyo, Frankfurt, and London scrambled to cut their own financial links to the US before the infection spread. Allies began to fracture. Japan demanded immediate US retaliation, fearing it was next. Australia offered limited support, but warned its own grid was vulnerable. European leaders hesitated, debating if joining America's fight would drag them into catastrophe. NATO convened an emergency session, but unity wavered. America's enemies had done more than shut down the grid. They had driven a wedge into the alliance system. Inside the Pentagon, the Joint Chiefs fought over options. Some demanded physical strikes, B-2 bombers targeting Chinese cyber warfare hubs, cruise missiles against data centers in Hainan and Shenzhen. Others warned that escalation would only invite more attacks, or worse, open conflict in the South China Sea. The president made his choice. "If this is war, we will not fight it in the shadows alone," he declared. "America will strike back, visibly." That evening, the first physical blow landed. From submarines lurking off the Chinese coast, Tomahawk missiles screamed into the night sky, hitting relay stations identified as part of the cyber offensive. Explosions lit the coastline near Shanghai, fireballs blooming where once data had flowed. The message was clear: America was moving beyond cyberspace. Beijing's reply came within hours. State media broadcast images of Chinese carriers setting sail from Hainan, their decks lined with fighter jets. The caption read, "Prepare for escalation." And so the conflict that had begun with silent keystrokes was transforming into something deadlier. The blackout had become blockade. The cyber war had become a shadow of real war. As night fell again on a powerless United States, families huddled in the dark, listening for the distant hum of generators, staring at skies without airplanes, streets without light. They asked themselves the question now haunting the world. If the lights never come back on, what comes next? The third week of the blackout brought the crisis to its peak. America's largest cities remained crippled. New York in darkness, Chicago paralyzed, Los Angeles lit only by fires and candlelight. Supermarkets emptied, hospitals faltered, and desperation turned streets into battlegrounds. What began as a cyber attack was now a national collapse, and abroad China prepared to press its advantage. From Hainan Island, the People's Liberation Army Navy surged into the South China Sea. Carriers Shandong and Fujian launched waves of J-35 stealth fighters, their silhouettes vanishing into the humid skies. Type 055 destroyers cut through the waves, bristling with hypersonic missiles. Behind them, swarms of unmanned drones, surface, aerial, and underwater, spread like locusts across contested waters. Beijing's message was clear: the Pacific now belongs to us. In Washington, the Pentagon's maps glowed red. Without satellites, America's forces relied on patchwork communications, old shortwave systems reactivated in haste. Generals debated strike the Chinese fleet directly or risk losing the Pacific. At 0200 hours, the order came: deploy all available assets, hold the line at any cost. The U.S. Navy responded with fury. From Guam, B-1 Lancers lifted off, their bays heavy with long-range anti-ship missiles. Submarines prowled beneath the Philippine Sea, preparing ambushes. Carrier strike groups USS Ronald Reagan and USS Abraham Lincoln surged east, their decks alive with F-35Cs. The largest American deployment since World War II was underway. The first clash erupted south of Taiwan. Chinese J-35s dove on American F-35s, the dogfight exploding into a storm of missile trails and flares. Hypersonics streaked from both sides, slamming into destroyers with fireballs that lit the midnight sky. The waters boiled with the wrecks of ships, flames reflecting on the waves. In less than 6 hours, the South China Sea became a graveyard. But the battlefield wasn't just at sea. High above, satellites died in silence. Chinese ground-based lasers targeted American reconnaissance satellites, blinding them in orbit. U.S. interceptors fired back, destroying Chinese satellites with kinetic strikes. Across the globe, GPS collapsed, communications flickered, and airlines rerouted in chaos. Humanity's lifeline to space was severed. On the ground in America, the blackout deepened. Cities slipped into lawlessness. In Los Angeles, gangs fought for control of food shipments. In New York, makeshift militias guarded neighborhoods with baseball bats and rifles. Police forces, stretched thin, could not hold the line. America's enemies watched the footage and saw not strength, but weakness. Yet the U.S. military fought on. American submarines scored their first decisive victory, torpedoing a Chinese carrier group near the Paracel Islands. Drones swarmed in retaliation, but the blow sent shockwaves through Beijing's command. For the first time, China realized the war might not remain limited to the Pacific. In Europe, NATO debated intervention. France and Britain urged caution. Their own grids were vulnerable. Poland and the Baltics demanded unity, warning that if China could cripple America, Russia would try the same in Europe. Australia and Japan, caught on the front line, pledged troops and ships to America's side. The conflict was no longer regional, it was global. By the end of the third week, the war had transformed. Cyber Armageddon was no longer just about shutting down the grid. It was about dominance. In cyberspace, at sea, in orbit, and in the streets of crumbling cities. The culmination came with one haunting realization. For decades, America's strength had rested on its technology. Now, blinded satellites, burning fleets, and blacked-out cities proved the terrifying truth. The superpower of the digital age could be undone by its own dependence on the grid. And yet both sides prepared for more. China readied another wave of cyber strikes. The US prepared hypersonic weapons for direct retaliation. Allies braced for impact. The world stood at the edge. The cyber war had become a real war. And the next move could ignite a conflict that would consume not just America or China, but the entire planet. The fourth week of the blackout began with silence. Not from victory, but exhaustion. In New York, the skyline was still dark, but the riots had slowed. In Los Angeles, food lines stretched for miles under the dim glow of generators guarded by soldiers. Chicago's streets echoed with sirens, but even chaos was tiring. America was on its knees, yet not broken. At the Pentagon, the War Council faced its most dangerous choice. Intelligence confirmed Beijing was preparing a second wave of cyber strikes, this time aimed not just at the grid, but at nuclear command and control. If successful, China could blind the very systems that kept America's deterrence secure. For generals, the choice was stark: retaliate now with conventional and cyber firepower, or risk losing the ability to retaliate at all. The president addressed the nation by radio, the only reliable channel left. His voice crackled across millions of powerless homes. America has been struck, but America will endure. Our enemies believe darkness makes us weak. They are wrong. We fight back now. The counterstrike came at dawn. U.S. Cyber Command unleashed every dormant weapon in its arsenal. Malware seeded years before, backdoors hidden in Chinese supply chains, code designed to cripple the world's second-largest economy. Within hours, ports in Shanghai froze, trains in Beijing halted, and financial exchanges flickered offline. Screens across China went dark. For the first time, its citizens tasted the chaos they had inflicted abroad. But the retaliation didn't stop in cyberspace. From Guam and Diego Garcia, B-2 bombers struck Chinese cyber warfare hubs in Hainan and Shenzhen. Precision missiles cratered server farms, antenna arrays, and satellite uplinks. The message was unmistakable. The U.S. would not remain a punching bag. Beijing roared back. Chinese destroyers fired barrages in the South China Sea, slamming into U.S. submarines. Drones swarmed American carriers, overwhelming defenses with sheer numbers. Yet the more the war escalated, the more both sides realized the terrifying truth. Neither could win without burning the world with them. By the second month, both economies trembled. Markets worldwide crashed. Oil spiked beyond $200 a barrel. Supply chains collapsed. Even allies panicked. Japan braced for blackouts. Europe debated neutrality. Australia feared isolation. The war was devouring not just its combatants, but the entire planet. And then, unexpectedly, the lights flickered. In New York, street lamps glowed faintly. In Chicago, subway systems shuddered back to life. In Los Angeles, a cheer rose as power grids stabilized for the first time in weeks. The reason wasn't victory, it was survival. Through backchannels in Switzerland, negotiators had struck a fragile ceasefire. Both sides would pull back from the brink. America's grid would be restored, China's systems left intact. The war for now would pause. The resolution was uneasy. Neither side admitted defeat, neither side claimed victory. Beijing declared the blackout a warning that proved U.S. vulnerability. Washington framed the recovery as proof of resilience. Behind the speeches lay the same grim reality. The world had just witnessed the first cyber war, and it nearly ended civilization. In the weeks that followed, the scars remained. America counted thousands dead from riots, fires, and hospital failures. China faced its own economic shock, its growth crippled by America's counterstrikes. Allies, once divided, demanded new treaties to defend against cyber warfare. NATO declared that a cyber attack on one member would now trigger Article 5. But the greatest scar was invisible: trust. The myth that technology made nations invincible was gone. Satellites, grids, networks, all of it could be broken, all of it weaponized. The age of nuclear deterrence had not ended. It had been joined by something even more unpredictable: cyber deterrence. As power returned to Times Square, the neon lights flickered like ghosts. America had survived Cyber Armageddon, but every light that came back on was a reminder of how quickly it could all go dark again. The resolution was fragile, temporary, and terrifying, because if the first cyber war nearly ended the world, the second might finish the job. Disclaimer: this video is a fictional simulation. It does not depict real events. It imagines how such a conflict could unfold and what consequences it could bring for the world.